I want to start with the moment I knew, because everyone always asks me that first. They ask when I found out. What they really mean is, how did you not see it sooner? And I understand the question. I've asked it of myself more times than I can count. Standing at my kitchen sink in Columbus, Ohio, staring at the little garden David and I planted our first spring in that house, wondering how a person can share a bed with a stranger for 11 years and call him her husband. The moment I knew was a Tuesday, not a weekend, when he was always gone, a regular Tuesday afternoon in October, and I was folding his laundry, and a receipt fell out of the pocket of his good gray coat. A receipt from a pediatric dentist in Cincinnati. 3 cleanings. 3 fluoride treatments. 3 names I had never heard in my life. Printed in a neat little column, and above them, the line for the responsible party. It said David Whitfield. My husband's name. My name, too, back then. I sat down on the edge of our bed, and I did not cry. That came later, in waves I couldn't predict. In that first moment, I just felt the whole floor of my life tilt, like a boat when the weight shifts. And everything I thought was solid started sliding toward one side. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back. Because you can't understand the size of the betrayal until you understand what I gave up to get there. My name is Rachel. I grew up in a small town outside Dayton. The kind of place where everyone's father worked at the same plant and everyone's mother knew your business before you did. I was a careful girl. Straight A's. Part-time job at the pharmacy. First in my family to go to college. I studied accounting at Ohio State because it was practical and because numbers never lied to me. Numbers were the one thing in the world that always added up. I met David when I was 24. He was 27. A regional sales manager for a medical equipment company. And he walked into the firm where I did the books to close a deal with one of my clients. He had this easy way about him. The kind of confidence that made a room feel warmer when he entered it. He asked me to lunch that same afternoon. I said no. He asked again the next week. I said yes. He was charming in a way that felt safe rather than slick. He remembered things. The name of my grandmother, my coffee order, the fact that I hated cilantro. He'd called just to say he was thinking about me. My friends adored him. My mother, who trusted no man on principle, told me after Thanksgiving that year that David was a keeper. We married 18 months later in a little church in Dayton with my whole family crying in the front pews. His mother, Patricia, did not cry. I noticed that even then, though I told myself it meant nothing, Patricia was a tall, elegant woman with silver hair she kept in a perfect bob, and she watched me all through the reception with a small, unreadable smile. When I hugged her, she patted my back twice. The way you'd pat a dog that jumped up on you. But she gave a lovely toast, and She gave us a generous check, and I decided she was just reserved. Some people are. Here is the part that matters. Here is the sacrifice. David's job required travel, and mine required staying put. I was building something at the accounting firm, on track to make partner before 35, doing work I loved. But when we married, we made a plan, the two of us, at our own kitchen table with a bottle of wine between us. He would climb the corporate ladder. I would step back. Someone needed to hold the home together. And since he made nearly triple what I did, it made sense for that someone to be me. So I turned down the partner track. I moved to part-time, then to freelance, then to keeping the books for a couple of small businesses from my home office. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself we'd have children, and I'd want the flexibility anyway. We tried for children. For 4 years we tried. I want you to sit with that, because it's the wound underneath all the other wounds. I went through 2 rounds of fertility treatment. I gave myself injections in the bathroom of that Columbus house with shaking hands. I had 1 miscarriage at 11 weeks that broke something in me I've never fully repaired. And through all of it, David was, I thought, a rock. He held me. He said the right things. He said, "We have each other, Rachel, and that's enough. If it's just us, that's a beautiful life too." I believed him. God help me. I believed every word. Now here is where I need you to pay attention, because the warning signs were there. They were always there. I just gave them all innocent explanations, because that's what love does. Love writes the kindest possible story over every strange fact. The business trip started small. A weekend here and there, a conference, a client site visit. But over the years they crept. By our 7th year of marriage, David was gone almost every single weekend. He'd leave Friday afternoon and come back Sunday night, sometimes Monday morning. Cincinnati, he'd say. Cleveland. Once in a while, Indianapolis. The medical equipment business was booming, he told me, and the weekend hospital administrators were the only ones with time to meet. I asked more than once, why weekends? Why not weekdays? Like normal business. He had an answer for everything. Doctors are in surgery all week. Administrators do their vendor meetings on Saturdays. The competition works weekends, so I have to work weekends. And I'd nod because what did I know about medical equipment sales? The second sign was his phone. He slept with it face down. He took calls in the garage. He had a passcode he never gave me, which he explained away by saying it was company policy, patient data, HIPAA, very serious stuff. When I once picked up his phone to check the weather because mine was charging, he crossed the room in 3 steps and took it out of my hand, and then he laughed and kissed my forehead and said, "Sorry, work stuff." You know how it is. His hand was not gentle when he took it. The third sign was money. I did the books for 2 other businesses, but I never fully did our own. That was David's domain. He handled the accounts, the mortgage, the investments. I had access to one joint checking account for household expenses, and it was always funded, always comfortable, so I never pushed. But once, filing our taxes, I noticed our income didn't match our lifestyle. We lived well, but not as well as a man making what David claimed to make. Where was the rest of it going? I wondered for exactly one afternoon before he explained that he was aggressively funding our retirement. And wasn't that smart? Wasn't that responsible? And didn't I trust him to take care of us? I did trust him. That was my whole crime. I trusted him. The fourth sign, and this is the one that haunts me, was Patricia. My mother-in-law, who lived 40 minutes away, was unavailable almost every single weekend for 11 years. Every time I invited her for Saturday dinner, she had a commitment. Every holiday that fell on a weekend, she arrived late and left early. She had her church activities, she said, her volunteering, her bridge club. I used to complain to David that his mother didn't seem to want to spend time with us. And he'd get oddly quiet and say, "That's just how she is. Don't take it personally." I did not take it personally. I should have taken it very personally indeed. The years passed. We settled into a rhythm that looked, from the outside, like a stable marriage. I had my accounting clients, my garden, my 2 close friends, Denise and Maria, who I met for wine on Thursday nights. David had his career, his weekend trips, his growing paycheck. We stopped trying for children when I was 36, after the second failed round. And I grieved that quietly and told myself I was at peace with it. He seemed at peace with it too, suspiciously at peace. I would later understand. The crack started to widen about 2 years before that Tuesday. The first crack was a phone call I overheard. It was a Sunday night. David had just gotten home from Cincinnati, and I was in the hallway when I heard him in the garage on the phone. His voice was low and warm in a way I hadn't heard him use with me in a long time. He said, "I know. Baby, I know I'll be back Friday. Tell them Daddy loves them. Tell them Daddy loves them." I stood frozen in that hallway. When he came in, I asked him who he was talking to. He didn't miss a beat. "My nephew," he said. "Tyler. You know, he calls me Daddy sometimes since his own dad's not around. It's a whole thing with my sister." And I nodded, because David had a sister, Karen, in Cincinnati, who I'd met maybe 4 times at holidays. A nervous woman who never quite met my eyes. It made a horrible kind of sense. I let it go. The second crack was the smell. David started coming home smelling of a house that wasn't ours. Not perfume. Nothing so obvious. It was the smell of a different laundry detergent, a different dish soap, the particular smell that houses have. I know how strange that sounds, but when you keep a home, you know its scent. And my husband kept coming home smelling faintly of somewhere else, somewhere with children in it. That milky sweet smell of a house with young kids that I had wanted so badly and never had. The third crack was the biggest, and I almost caught it. And I've thought 1,000 times about how different my life would be if I'd pulled that thread all the way. I was driving through Cincinnati on my way back from a client meeting, taking the long way to avoid an accident on the highway, and I saw David's car, his silver Acura, with the little dent in the back bumper from when he backed into our mailbox, and the Ohio State sticker in the rear window. It was parked in the driveway of a modest blue house in a nice suburban neighborhood, a house with a swing set in the yard and a basketball hoop over the garage. I slowed down. My heart was pounding, and then I told myself, there are thousands of silver Acuras. Rachel, you're being paranoid. David's at a hospital in a meeting, and I drove on. I want to reach back through time and grab that woman by the shoulders and shake her, but I didn't. I drove home and I made dinner, and when David called that night to say goodnight from his hotel, I asked how the meeting went, and he said, great, closed a big deal. And I said I was proud of him. I was proud of him. So, now you understand. Now you understand what I was holding when that dentist receipt fell out of his coat pocket on that Tuesday in October. And I read 3 children's names. And my husband's name above them as the responsible party. I did not confront him. This is important. And it's the thing I'm most grateful to myself for. Numbers taught me patience. Numbers taught me that you don't announce your findings until the audit is complete. So I put the receipt in my own pocket, and I folded the rest of the laundry. And when David came home that evening, I kissed him and asked about his day. And I began, very quietly, to build my case. That night, after he was asleep, I photographed the receipt. Then I did what I should have done years earlier. I opened my laptop and I searched the names of those 3 children in Cincinnati. It took me 2 hours to fall through the trapdoor of my own life. The oldest name led me to a youth soccer league page in Cincinnati, with a team photo and a roster. And there in the second row was a boy of about 10 who had my husband's exact eyes. The same photo tagged a parent volunteer, Vanessa Reyes. I searched her. She had a public enough footprint. A woman about my age, pretty, warm smile, worked part-time as a dental hygienist, which explained the receipt, and her photos, going back years, showed a life. A blue house with a swing set, a basketball hoop, birthday parties, and in a handful of them, at a distance in the background, half turned away from the camera, was a man I would know anywhere, my husband. In one photo, he was holding a baby. In another, he was lighting candles on a cake. In another, And this is the one that made me put my hand over my mouth in the dark of my own kitchen. In another, he had his arm around Vanessa, and his mother, Patricia, was standing on her other side holding a toddler. All three of them smiling into the camera like a family. Because they were a family. My mother-in-law knew. My mother-in-law had known for years. Every weekend she was unavailable. Every holiday she arrived late. She was in Cincinnati, in that blue house, babysitting my husband's other 3 children so that he and Vanessa could go out. She was grandma to those kids. She had chosen those grandchildren over me, the daughter-in-law, who couldn't give her any. And she had smiled at my dinner table and lied to my face for over a decade. I want to tell you, I handled the next part with grace. I mostly didn't. I sat on my kitchen floor at 3 in the morning and I shook. But underneath the shaking, the accountant in me was already working. And by dawn I had a plan. And the plan was not revenge. The plan was truth and safety and the door out. Because here's what I understood. Sitting on that floor, if I screamed at David that night, he would talk his way out of it. He was the most gifted liar I have ever met. He would find some story, some angle, and even if I didn't believe it, I'd have tipped my hand and lost my advantage. And there were 3 children involved. Innocent children who had done nothing wrong, who deserved a father, whatever their father was. And there was money, our money, the money I'd been kept away from for 11 years, that I now understood had probably been funding 2 households the whole time. So, I did the hardest thing I have ever done. For 3 weeks, I said nothing. For 3 weeks, I lived beside my husband and smiled and cooked and asked about his fake meetings. And every night after he slept, I built my file. I hired a private investigator, a soft-spoken former police detective named Frank, who I paid from a personal account David didn't monitor. Within 10 days, Frank had confirmed everything and more. David and Vanessa had been together for 12 years. 12 years. They'd met a year into my marriage. Their oldest was 10. Their middle child 7, their youngest 4. Vanessa believed David was a divorced man who traveled for work during the week and came home on weekends. She had no idea I existed. Read that again, because it undid me. She was a victim too. She thought she was his wife in every way that mattered. He told her a mirror image of the lie he told me. To me, he was gone on weekends. To her, he was gone on weekdays. He had built 2 entire lives and stood in the seam between them for over a decade. And his own mother had held the fabric together. Frank also traced the money, which is where my own profession finally came home to roost. David made good money, but not enough for 2 households at the level we both lived. So he had been quietly draining our joint retirement accounts, the ones he told me he was so responsibly funding. He had taken a second mortgage on our Columbus house without my knowledge, forging my signature on the documents. The paperwork Frank pulled showed my name in handwriting that was not mine. Our retirement, the security I thought I'd traded my whole career for, was nearly gone. I stopped shaking after that. Something in me went cold and clear. I got a lawyer, a sharp woman named Angela who had seen everything and flinched at none of it. I moved a portion of the remaining household money into an account in my name only, which my lawyer confirmed I had every right to do. I made copies of everything: the forged mortgage documents, the bank records, Frank's photographs, the dentist receipt that started it all. I put all of it in a folder. And I put the folder in a safe deposit box. And I waited for the right moment. The right moment came on a Friday afternoon in November, as David was packing his overnight bag for Cincinnati. I sat on the edge of our bed, and I watched him fold his shirts. And I said, in a voice so calm it frightened even me, "How are Vanessa and the kids?" He froze. I have never seen a man freeze like that. His hand stopped on a folded shirt, and he did not turn around, and the silence stretched so long I could hear the furnace click on downstairs. When he finally turned, he tried a laugh. "Who?" he said. And I set the folder on the bed and opened it to the family photo. The one with Patricia holding the toddler. And I watched the last of the color drain out of his face. He tried everything over the next hour. First denial, which died the moment he saw the depth of the folder. Then he tried the sad story, that he'd been trapped, that it started as a mistake and he never knew how to end it, that he loved me, that he'd always loved me. That Vanessa meant nothing. I let him talk. When he ran out, I said one thing. I said, "You forged my name on a second mortgage, David. That's not an affair. That's a felony." That's when the crying stopped and the real David came out. The one I'd never fully met. He got cold. He said I'd never prove it. He said the kids needed him, and if I blew this up, I'd be hurting children. He tried to make me the villain, and for one long minute, because I am human, it almost worked. Then I thought of my own name in a stranger's handwriting, and I picked up the folder. And I told him my lawyer would be in touch. And I asked him to leave the house that I now knew was mortgaged out from under me, without my consent. He left. He went to Cincinnati, of course. Where else would he go? The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. And I won't pretend otherwise. But I want to tell you what I did. Because I'm proud of it, and because I hope it helps someone. I did not blow up Vanessa's life for the pleasure of watching it burn. I thought about it, believe me, in the small, ugly hours. I thought about driving to that blue house and detonating the whole thing. But she had children, and she was, like me, a woman who'd been lied to for 12 years by a master. So I had my lawyer contact her through hers with the facts, calmly and completely. I learned later that when Vanessa saw the proof, she sat down on her kitchen floor the same way I had. She called me a week after that, and we talked for 3 hours. Two strangers who'd been married to the same shadow. And by the end of it, something in both of us had healed a little. We are not friends exactly, but we're the only two people on Earth who fully understand what happened. And there's a strange sisterhood in that. The legal consequences came down hard and fairly. The forged mortgage was the thing that turned it from a messy divorce into something with teeth. Mortgage fraud is a federal matter, and David's forgery was documented and provable. My lawyer used it as leverage, not to send him to prison, which would only have hurt those 3 children who needed his income, but to ensure the divorce settlement was entirely in my favor. I got the house, with the fraudulent mortgage voided against him. I got the larger share of what retirement remained, plus a judgment for what he drained. He got the debts. He got the truth following him for the rest of his life. Patricia called me exactly once during the divorce. I almost didn't answer. When I did, she didn't apologize. She said, in that cool, elegant voice, I hope you understand, I was only being a grandmother. As if that word could cover 11 years of lies at my own dinner table. I said, you were a grandmother to those children and a liar to me. And both of those are true. And I hope they're worth what they cost you. Then I hung up, and I have not spoken to her since. I hear she still babysits in Cincinnati on weekends. I hope those kids never learn what she is capable of. David lost more than the settlement. He lost Vanessa, who left him and took the children to her mother's, and who now, last I heard, is doing the slow work of rebuilding on honest ground. He lost the respect of the few people who knew the full story. He kept his job and his charm. And I'm sure by now he's telling some new woman about his difficult ex-wife and his complicated past. That's the thing about men like David. They don't reform. They relocate. As for me, I went back to work. Real work. I called the accounting firm I'd left 11 years earlier. And I told the truth about why I'd been gone. And they hired me back, not on the partner track I'd sacrificed, but on a good track, a real one. And I've been rebuilding my career for 2 years now with a hunger I forgot I had. I kept the house. I replanted the garden. I sold the bed. I sleep alone in a new one, in the middle of it. And I sleep well. I'd love to tell you I'm completely healed. I'm not. There are nights the grief for the children I never had rises up and mixes with the rage that he had three of them all along. And I have to breathe through it. There are moments in the grocery store when a man laughs like David used to laugh, and my whole body goes cold. Healing isn't a finish line. It's a direction. I'm walking in it. Here is the lesson I carry now. The one I'd hand to you across the table if we were friends. Trust is beautiful, and trust is necessary. And you should never marry someone you can't trust. But trust is not the same as willful blindness. I gave up my career, my financial independence, and my own instincts, all in the name of trusting my husband. And every one of those sacrifices became a wall he hid behind. When my gut told me something was wrong. When the smell of a strange house came home in his clothes. When his own car sat in a stranger's driveway, I overruled myself. I chose the kind story over the true one, again and again, for 11 years. So keep your own accounts. Not because you assume the worst of the person you love, but because a person who loves you back will never resent you for being whole. Keep one foot in your own life. Know where the money goes. And when your instincts whisper to you, do not tell them to be quiet. They are usually the only ones telling you the truth. I lost 11 years to a lie, but I got my whole self back. And on balance, in the ledger I keep now that finally adds up, I think I came out ahead. Now I want to hear from you. If your gut had whispered to you the way mine did. Standing on that quiet street in Cincinnati looking at a car that could not possibly be his, do you think you would have knocked on that door? Or would you have driven home like I did and told yourself a kinder story? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone.